Chapter 7. Asking a Better Question. The right question changes everything. Sometimes solving the problem means asking a different question. Graduate school and research in the Arctic. Graduation wasn't the end of my education. In many ways, it was only the beginning. After 12 years of working toward qualifications I once thought were well beyond my reach, I found that I genuinely enjoyed academic life. Rather than returning immediately to full-time Navy duties, I applied for the Navy's prestigious postgraduate training on scholarship program. As part of the application process, I needed to obtain a commercial scholarship, which I obtained from the Gulf Oil Company. I learned just before graduation that I was accepted into the program and approved to attend the University of Victoria with full pay and allowances. I also received a bursary from the University of Victoria, which put me in a much better place financially than I was in when I last attended a civilian academic institution, the Nova Scotia Institute of Technology. Another impossible assignment. I was looking forward to advancing my learning when I began my studies toward a master's degree in science. Then I was given what appeared to be an impossible research assignment. My graduate thesis was sponsored by the Defence Research of Canada and involved researching acoustics needed to track submarines underneath the Arctic ice. There was only one problem. The project didn't have funding for me to travel to the Arctic. How could I complete this research if I couldn't travel to the Arctic? For several days I stared at the problem, trying to solve it. Nothing seemed to work. Then suddenly occurred to me, perhaps I was asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, how do I get to the Arctic? I asked, how can I bring the Arctic to me? I see we have some words of wisdom from Grandpa in a new signpost. This one says, when you can't find the answer, ask a better question. Now, back to the story. Instead of traveling to the Arctic, I decided to build one inside an anechoic chamber. The psychology department had built just what I needed. They had built an anechoic chamber that they used for sensory deprivation studies. So I built a rotating sound source in their anechoic chamber to simulate submarines transiting underneath the ice. Just when I had everything set up, I learned that the Defense Research had found the funds needed to travel to the Arctic. But now I didn't need to travel because I had successfully brought the Arctic to me. The solution impressed Defense Research Canada so much that they were confident they could redirect the Arctic travel funds to other projects. Upon graduation, the Navy felt I needed more academic training and sent me to the Technical University of Nova Scotia to study engineering. After a final year of academic studies, I was ready to get into the field. 12 years earlier, I had failed grade 12. Now, I held multiple university degrees, and I had completed 12 years of post-secondary education. The difference wasn't intelligence. The difference was that I'd finally stopped asking, why can't this be done? And started asking, how can it be done? Looking back, I realized something important. Roadblocks had never been real obstacles. They were simply forcing me to think differently. Let's take a minute to reflect on this chapter. Looking back, I think this may have been one of the most important lessons of my career. When we encounter a difficult problem, our first instinct is often to attack the problem exactly as it's been presented to us. We assume the question was correct. We simply try to find the answer. But sometimes, the question itself is the roadblock. Once you change the question, the problem can be looked at completely differently. I didn't need to find a way to travel to the Arctic. I needed a way to reproduce the conditions I was studying. That small change in perspective opened an entirely different path, and I've carried that lesson with me ever since. When something seems impossible, try not to ask, why can't this be done? I asked, how can this be done? It's now time for another letter to Marlies. Dear Marlies, when people face a difficult problem, most of them immediately begin looking for an answer. I've learned that sometimes there's even a better place to begin. Ask yourself whether you're solving the right problem. When I was told to study the Arctic, but couldn't afford to travel there, I spent days trying to answer the wrong question. How do I get to the Arctic? Only when I changed the question did the answer appear. How can I bring the Arctic to me? That lesson stayed with me for the rest of my life. Whenever you feel stuck, don't immediately assume there isn't a solution. Look at the problem from a different direction. Ask a different question. Sometimes changing the question changes everything. With love, Grandpa. A look ahead at this next chapter. For most of my early life, the roadblocks had been my own. I had struggled in school. I'd learned differently. I had faced rejection, and I'd learned to find another route. But eventually, something changed. The problems were no longer just mine to solve. Other people were depending on me, and I was about to discover that being technically capable and being a leader were two very different things.